Hi guys, what's up? Welcome to my channel. My name is Ndifon Ntui, and on this channel I make sewing tutorials. I post new videos every Wednesdays and Saturdays. So if you're into that sort of thing, please make sure to check back on those days to see new content. Now in this video I'm going to show you guys how to make the jacket that you guys have seen in the thumbnail and you've seen in the b-roll before I started talking. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Do not forget to subscribe. If you're a beginner or you're a person that wants to brush up on your skill, I offer online courses. If you're interested, call the number that you see on the on your screen. Don't call the number. Send a WhatsApp message to the number that you can see on the screen. I'll be showing a demo how to make a jumpsuit so that you can watch and decide if it's be convenient for you to learn online. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye. Okay, you guys are welcome to today's video. Now before we begin, these are the things we will need. Here I have my fabric stay that I'm going to use, my cotton lining, and this is gum stay. This gum stay will be used on the flare for the sleeve. Now I'm using gum stay because this is a cheap alternative to cloth gum. If you have the budget for it, you can use cloth gum in place of the hard gum stay I'm using here. Now why should you use cloth gum if this can get it done? Because cloth gum sticks to the fabric for a longer period of time than gum stay does. Now to begin, we'll start at the point where we always start. Now I know a lot of you that have been following my channel for some time now would already know what I'm about to do right now, and you guys wish that I just skipped the beginning, but there's always going to be somebody that's watching my channel for the very first time. That's why I take my time to draft everything step by step. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to need to keep allowance on both places. Now you guys have seen the jacket, so what we're going to do is we're going to come to the top and draw a line, okay? And then in front of here too, I need you to rule another half-inch line. So in case you are thinking of how to place half-inch, this is how you do it. You come from the edge and make a mark at the beginning of your tape, half an inch sits. So now when you're done with that, we have to start drafting bodies, okay? First of all, we're going to mark all our vertical measurements. When I say vertical measurements, I'm talking about measurements like your dress length, your underbust length, your all the measurements that have lengths attached to them. Okay, so now what I'm going to place first is your underbust length. My underbust length is 15, and now how I find my bust is 4 inches up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is how I find where to place my bust measurements. Okay, now from the underbust length to where I place my hip is 10 inches. So we're going to come from the underbust length. We're going to come to where 10 inches after the underbust length is, and we're going to make a mark. Now this is where we're going to place our hip line. Now now the next thing I'm going to place is my shoulder to my belly measurement. Yeah, I didn't place that, but I took the measurement on the person. Now how do I get my shoulder to belly? I take the tape from the shoulder to where the person's belly button is. Would call this measurement the waist measurement. So mine is 18. From the shoulder to where the belly is 18. The last one I'm going to place is my dress length. We need to know where the dress is going to stop. So I'm going to come from up here and go all the way down. So the dress length we're working with is 36. So we're going to come to where 36 is down here. Okay, so this way 36 stops. We're going to make a mark there. So this way 36 is. This is the length of the jacket. Okay, so since the jacket is a bit long. Okay, so since we have a lot of lines, so that you guys don't get a bit confused, let me label some of the lines. So up here we have shoulder. Here the B represents our bust, the UBL, that's the underbust length, W is the waist, H is the hip, and you guys know already that this line at the end is the jacket's length. Okay, now let's move on. Of course, now you see the place where I placed B. That's where we're going to place our bust measurement. Okay, so you guys know our bust measurement is 39. 39 divided by 4 is 9.75. So now notice where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the half inch when I'm taking my measurements. I'm not coming from the front of the paper. I'm coming from the half inch allowance that I kept, and I'm placing it 9.75. Okay, so 9.75. I'm going to make a mark at 9.75. Now my underbust round measurement, so my underbust round falls on my underbust length. You can see labeled the UBL. My underbust round is 33. 33 divided by 4 is 8.25. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to make a mark at 8.25. all right, now the same thing, I'm taking the measurement from the ½ inch, not from the front of the paper. Now my shoulder to belly, where I place my waist measurement, is I'll place my waist measurement there. The waist measurement is is 34. Okay, so 34 is 8.5. Okay, so after the waist, we're going to come to where we have the hip, the line that's labeled H. We're going to come to the hip measurements, and we're going to place the hip measurement. The hip is 41, so 41 divided by 4 is 10.25. We're going to come here, make a mark at 10.25, and then the same thing we place at the hip, we'll place at the end of the jacket. So the place that's labeled jacket length, we're going to also place 10.25. When we've done this, we're going to draw a line connecting all these points together. So you guys can already see the person's figure coming out. You can see the curve that we have here. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come to the top, and we'll have to work on the neckline. What's happening around the neckline and the shoulder. Remember, we've not placed the shoulder measurements at the top already. Okay, so the shoulder measurement we're dealing with is 15. Shoulder divided by 2. 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. That's what you can see up there. 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place my neckline width and my neckline depth. Okay, now the numbers I'm giving to you here would work for if you're a person that is a medium-sized person. This neckline width and neckline depth will work for you. Even a plus-size person, this is also going to work for you as well. But if you're a person that is on the small side, let's say you have a bust of 33, for my neckline width for you I would use 3, and for the neckline depth I'll use 3. But for this size, I'm going to use 3.5 for the neckline width, and for my neckline depth I'm going to use 3.5. Okay, so you see the same thing here and the same thing here. Okay, so I did 3.5, and then from here to here too is 3.5 as well. So now we have a square neck there, but that's not what we are going for. So I'm going to curve this. So you see that now we've curved the neckline. Now a person's shoulder is not straight, so we're going to have to make slope the shoulder by 1 inch. Okay, so now where I'm coming from is I'm coming from here when I'm taking the 1 inch, just like how I started from here when I was placing on my measurements. I'm coming from this blue line to mark the 1 inch, not from the top of the paper. Okay, and now I'll connect here to here, and then I'm going to keep ½ inch on top. So watch this. Okay, so you see this, I'm going to have a ½ inch line running, like a parallel ½ inch line running on top of here. That will serve as our allowance. Now the next thing we're going to do is we have to place our armhole measurement. Now how do we find our armhole measurement? The formula for finding the armhole is the bust divided by 6 plus 1.5. okay, now the bust divided by 39 divided by 6 plus 1.5 gives us an armhole of 8 inches. Okay, so 8 inches, we're going to come from here straight down first. 8 inches. When we come to 8 inches, we're going to come out like so, and then we're going to run here to the top. That's 8 inches. From here, from the beginning down here is 8 inches. Now the front side of your armhole, you need to curve it in. Okay, always need to curve the front side of your armhole in. So what you do is, how you curve the front side of your armhole in is you come from the top here to the middle of 8. The middle of 8 is 4 inches. Now in my case, the middle of 8, if your armhole is 7, this is going to be 3.5. If your armhole is 9, this is going to be 4.5. okay, so the middle of whatever you place, so the middle of 8 for me is 4 inches. I'm going to come mark, I've made a mark at 4 inches, as you can see right there. Now I'm going to come in, you see this blue armhole line that I ruled, I'm going to come in by ½ an inch. Okay, now after I come in by ½ an inch, I'm going to make a curve. All right, so I'm going to come from the top. Now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 inches. So you see all these lines, my armhole line here, I'm going to add 2 inch here everywhere. And when I'm done adding, so you see this line I had here, I added 2 inches everywhere. When I'm done with that, I'll simply connect all the 2 inches I have together. When you're done with that, the next step is to cut it out. So you can see what we have here. Now one more thing, I need to cut something down here. Now to cut this, remember at the bottom here I need only 2 inches of sewing allowance. I don't need the whole 3.5 inches that we have here. So I'm going to come from where we have the dress length right there. I'm going to come down, make a mark at where 2 inches is, rule that line across, okay, and then I'm going to cut it. So now the next step is to get the fabric. Now this pattern that I have just drafted will cut the front and the back of the dress, of the jacket for us. I just need to make some slight modifications for us to be able to cut it back at the armhole and at the front. You guys will see it, and then also at the neckline. Okay, so you guys can see I made a fold and I placed my pattern on top of it. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to cut around the pattern. The pattern that we're cutting now is meant for the front. The next thing that we need to do, remember the paper, we didn't put the paper on a fold, but we've now put the fabric on a fold. So next thing we have to do is we need to open here up, because remember the front of the jacket has an opening. So we've cut that part open. The front was not, we didn't put the fabric on a fold, and we didn't put the paper on the fold, but we put the fabric on the fold. So we need to open up the front, because remember the jacket has an opening in front. Now I'm going to make a fold. Now I'm going to make a fold for the back. Now the front needs this 1/2 inch of excess because of the sewing allowance we need for the lining, but the back doesn't have an opening like the front. So you see this 1/2 inch that we kept. Okay, the 1/2 inch that we kept for the front, the back does not need it, so we're going to need to fold it in. So I need you to fold in right at where that blue line is. When you're done folding that part, next thing is to adjust your fabric, and then we're going to cut. Okay, now I placed my pattern down and I'm using these padlocks as my paperweights. Now notice something around the neck. We don't need the back neckline of the jacket to be low as this, so we're going to need to modify the neckline. So you see this line, remember that I drew a line at the shoulder. I'm going to replicate that the very first line that I made here. Okay, so that's the very first thing I'm going to do, and then I'm going to reduce the neckline by only 1/2 inch. So you see from the beginning to the middle of this part here, before 1 inch here, I'm going to come down by only 1/2 inch. Okay, and then I'm going to make a slope from here out. Okay, so you see that. So what I did there, I made a slope from here and I came out. Now the other place that you need to make a modification is at the armhole. Okay, so at the armhole you don't need to curve in at the back, so you're going to come out by 1/2 inch and go there normally. So you see, I hope you can see the difference at the armhole there. Okay, all right, I hope you can see. Look at where the fabric stops, look, the paper stops. Look at where I've marked on the fabric. All right, so now cut the armhole at the chalk line. So you see where the armhole for the neckline for the front is, and look at where the neckline for the back is. So you see, this is Nigeria. Hey, you cannot work with light. No, you cannot work with light. No, you have to buy your for whoa. Nepa took like yay. My journey is on now. Yay. At the end of the month, yeah, my bill is 10,000. I really don't know. Anyhow, you guys have seen what I've done at the neckline here. Yeah, the armhole, that's the difference that we have between the front and the back. Now I'm going to cut the lining for these two sides exactly the same. The pattern will be exactly the same with what you have seen, what I have done for this. That's the back and the front. You know, at least try and give us light. It's not that you keep us in darkness and at the end you come, I will cut this light. Try me and see if I will not cut this light. How much is your bill? Your bill is 10,300. So you can see what I told you guys. I cut the lining exactly the same with the fabric, and you see this is the front, and here it's also doubled too as well. Okay, we have 2 levels of the black as well. Now the only difference between the lining and for the front and the back, whatever I do to the lining in this front, make sure you do the same thing to your lining that's meant for the back. The only between the front the only difference between the body, okay, and the lining is that we'll need to reduce the length of the lining by 3 inches. Okay, so you see this, I'm going to reduce the length of the lining by 3 whole inches. Okay, but we'll leave the length of the body as it is. All right, so make sure that you also shorten the length of your lining at the to shorten the length of the lining that you cut for the pattern that's the back pattern. Okay, so let me cut the lining meant for the back, and I'll be back. So before you here, you have the pattern, the fabric, the pattern, the pattern and the lining that's meant for. You have the pattern and lining that's meant for the back, and you can see I've also reduced the length there by 3 inches. All right, so now the next step is to iron stay. Okay, so you guys, if you've been on my channel for some time, you guys know I always like using this to stabilize my fabric and to give my fabric more body. So I'm going to iron stay to the front and the back. Okay, so I've ironed the stay onto the front. You can tell this is the front. Look, I have split everything up. Now for the darts, we need to mark out where the darts are going to be before we head back to the machine to make everything a lot easier for us. So what we're going to do is we are going to come from 1/2 inch after the shoulder. Remember how we placed that part there? So 1/2 inch after the shoulder, that's where you start from, and then you're going to come to where, remember, you're going to come to 1 inch before the bust. So remember our under bust length was 15. We counted 4 to where we place our bust at 11. So we're going to come to 12 inches and we're going to make a mark. Okay, now this will be a bit difficult to see because I'm doing pink on pink. Let me get the black. Okay, so you're going to come to 11 and you're going to make a mark. Now make sure that when you're placing this mark that you use the person's bust point to bust point as a guide. So for me, the bust point to bust point is 8 inches. 8 inches divided by 2, it's going to be 4 inches plus 1/2 inch, 4.5. But remember, we kept 1/2 inch in front of here, so I'm going to place 5 inches. 1/2 inches for that space, 4 inches for my that, and 1/2 inch extra, so 5 inches where I'm marking my X. Now as for the length of the dart from this X, you're going to come to you make the dart to be 10 inches long. Okay, so you see this, after 1 inch after where the bust is supposed to be, you come to where 10 inches and you make a mark. Please make sure that here is 5 inches, that is sitting at 5 inches as well. So I've made an X at the 2 points that are supposed to be where the darts will sit, and then this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a fold. Okay, you're going to need to heat up your iron for this one. I'm going to make a fold. Turn it to this point. So you see these 2 places that are notched here and here. You're going to iron everything flat. Okay, so when you iron this part, it should reflect everywhere. Look at it here. I hope you guys can see there's a crease in the lining from here to here. Okay, so now I know where my dart should start and where it should stop on all the patterns. You can also see it's on this other part of the lining too. Okay, and then it should also be here as well. So yep, I can trace it. This is where the top part is, and this is where the end is on this part as well. So you see that. So now when I head back to my sewing machine, I will just fold to all these points and I would hold, and with that, and that would correspond on all the pieces, both the 2 sides of the front and the lining that is meant for the back. So that's the easiest way. That's a very easy way to go about the whole thing. As for the back, I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to come from, as for the back, I'm going to come from here, and then I'm going to come to 7 inches. Okay, make a mark at 7, check and see that here is 4.5, make a mark at 4.5. Now for the length of the darts, I'm going to come down by 13 inches. Okay, 13 inches. Make sure that here is 4.5. Now you know that this 4.5 will not be the same thing for every person. If you're a bigger person, your bust point to bust point, that's what I'm placing here, that is for both the front and the back, will be different. Okay, so first off, let's begin with the pattern that is meant for the back. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to see the X that we have marked on the fabric. We're going to take it. Okay, so you start from nothing. Start from nothing, open it up to half an inch. So sew half an inch down. When you're getting close to the end, I hope you can see this X that's marked here. We're going to now taper the darts out. Okay, I'm going to repeat the same thing on this other side of the back. You can see with that we have darted the back. I'm going to also dart the lining part of the back as well. And with that we have darted both the fabric and the lining of the back. Now the next place I'm going to dart is the front. So it's quite similar to what I did at the back. I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side of the front. That's the fabric side of the front, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the lining as well. Okay, so I have ironed everything flat. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join my shoulders together. Okay, so you see this part here, this is the back of the fabric, you can tell. Okay, you can see the shoulder and you can see the high neckline. Now I'm going to join my shoulders together by half an inch. Remember that half inch we kept when we were drafting. We're going to stitch it now. Okay, so you see this, I'm going to join the shoulders together on both sides. So now I'm going to basically do the same thing to my lining, but after I'm done with that, I'm going to keep my pattern, my fabric, the way you have seen it here, and I'm going to flatten these two pieces I just joined like so. So you see these two places I just joined, I'm going to iron it flat like this at the shoulder. Do the same thing here as well. Okay, so let me join the lining. Okay, so like I said, you can see that I've ironed both sides of the shoulder flat. I've also done the same thing on the lining too. So now what I'm going to do is, so you see this bottom part here, this is the part of the lining that I ironed. I know it's black, so it will be a bit difficult to see, but this is the two places that I've ironed flat. You see this part now, this is the front of the back of my lining, sorry, this is the front of my lining that's facing up here. So what I'm going to simply do now is I'm going to take the fabric that is meant for that part. So now you see I'm placing the front of my fabric facing the front of the lining. You can tell it's the front of the lining because here is neat. This other side underneath is the part where I iron and folded. I'm going to join these two pieces together at half an inch around the neck. So now the next thing is to notch. Okay, so you see I'm going to notch around. I notched to make the whole thing smoother, Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take up your lining like that. You see all this excess that you have under here. I need you to push all the excess towards the lining, and I'm going to top stitch. Okay, at this point we're going to top stitch from here all the way around. Make sure that the rough work is always coming up towards the lining. When you are done with that, after the notching and the top stitching, the neck should turn in perfectly. Okay, so before we go any further, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to join the sides. Okay, so now you see this is the front of the fabric. Okay, this part here is the front. You can see that's the back that is underneath there, like so. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the armhole. You see the armhole? I'm going to join the whole thing together at 1/2 inch. Okay, so starting from the armhole all the way down 1/2 inch. Now I'm going to repeat the same thing on this side. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join the lining too the same way. Okay, so the same thing will be done to the lining. This armhole here, we're going to join 1/2 inch all the way down. The same thing what we did on the fabric, but remember the front of the lining should be facing the front of the lining. The parts that where the dart is neat, this is the rough side of the dart, is facing up. The other side, that's the one underneath, the rough side of the dart should be facing the machine. So when you've joined the sides together on both sides, okay, so you see this part here, what you're going to do next is you see this part here, this is the part I just joined. Thank God that the bottom part is white. I hope you can see that that's 1/2 inch I just joined. So this is the wrong side of the dart. Okay, you can see that this is the right side of the dart on the wrong side of the dart on the fabric. So basically I'm placing the front of my lining facing the front of my fabric. I'm going to come to the hem. So you see this part here, this is the hem. Look at this joining that I have here. Okay, see the joining that I have here. So this is the hem of the jacket. I'm going to drag the lining. Remember we cut the lining shorter, but now you will place the lining on the same level. Okay, and then you would sew 1/2 inch across from here all the way down. Now that you have joined the hem, the next thing you're going to do is we're going to run from the top part here. So now you see this part here, this is the neck. You can see where I notched. Okay, so now you're going to, okay, so as I was saying, you're going to come from the neckline. Okay, so you can see this is the front of the pattern that we have. Look at the armhole over here. So you're going to come from the top here, and you're going to join the lining and the fabric together from the neckline all the way to the hem. We'll join the both sides by 1/2 inch. So by the time you do this, make sure you do this on the both sides. Make sure you seal this other side as well. You can see I have sealed this side as well, and then you turn from the armhole and you turn everything inside out. So with all the stitching that we have done, you will notice that we have basically built the jackets. You will need to iron this here properly and bring everything out. The last thing that is left now is the sleeve. So make sure to go and see my video on how to draft the sleeve, because that's how I would draft the first part of the sleeve, and I'm not going to film it, so this video is not unnecessarily long. Okay, so last time you saw the jacket, it was still on the machine, and I had not done a lot of what I have done now. So I basically just turned everything inside out and I ironed it, and you can see this is the result. First of all, this side that we have here, you can see we don't have any seams showing anywhere. On the other side, I know that you guys have noticed that I have fixed a sleeve on this other parts right here. Okay, I'm going to show you guys step by step how I was able to achieve this sleeve. All right, first thing you're going to do is, like I said, go and watch the video on how to draft a sleeve, and you should have a pattern that looks like this. All right, so you see this is the sleeve pattern that I used to draft that sleeve, and this is the lining. Okay, so I cut the sleeve and the lining exactly the same. I didn't shorten the lining. The lining is the same pattern with the sleeve, as you can see here. Okay, so you see what we have here. Now whatever I show you guys on this sleeve, simply just repeat the same thing on the other sleeve. Now the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to fold the fabric, the sleeve, like this, and then I need you to fold the body of the sleeve like this also. Okay, so you see this. So now notice what's happening here. You see this part of the sleeve, that is the inside of the sleeve, is facing up. If you look at this part here too, you can see the inside, where, as in where we have this curve, is also facing up here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a line from up here. You see the front of the sleeve here. I'm going to start from here, this corner here, 1/2 inch, and I'm going to open up the stitch to 1 inch. The same thing from here. I'll start from 1/2 inch, open up to 1 inch. Okay, so here you can see I started from 1/2 inch and I've sewn and I've opened it up to 1 inch at this area right here. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to lay it flat and iron it. And now next thing I want you to do is, when you're done ironing it, turn the whole sleeve inside out, and then I want you to take this other part here and plant it in. Okay, so you see this, I didn't turn this other one inside out. Simply just plant it into the sleeve like so, and then we're going to stitch around. All right, so now I'm going to stitch around here. Now you see here is rough. I'm not talking about from inside. It means I'm going to run a stitch that you will visibly see outside here, simply just holding the lining and the fabric together. All right, so you see this. Let me turn everything inside out. I hope you can see the thread that I have running around here. Now the next thing we need to do is to cut the fillet. Now the fillet is supposed to be attached to the end here. You guys must have seen 3 measurements in the first in the measurements that I showed you guys at the beginning of the video. There were 3 measurements for the sleeve length. You see 10/15/17. Now the first 10 that you see there, okay, the first 10 that you can see there is the sleeve length from here. That's the point where it meets the shoulder to here, 10. The /15 is the length from here to the end of the first fillet is 15, and the 17 is the distance from here to the longest end that you can see here. You can see that this part here is longer than the first fillet, okay, by 2 inches. All right, so when you are cutting the fillet, what you are going to do is the first 15, that means this 10, by the time you subtract 10 from 15, what you have is 5. So the size of the first fillet here is 5, the size of the second fillet there is 7. So I'm going to show you guys how to cut the first fillet, and we use that pattern to cut both the and cut the fillet for that's 7 inches long as well. Now one thing you need to know is that if you notice, I've turned lining. Okay, now you guys can see the time. It's 10:25 at night. Okay, I had plans to finish this video this night because I can lay down. Look at it right there. Now I can lay down and press my phone till tomorrow morning, but my plan was to finish this jacket today, no matter the cost. But let me before I forget, because you know I was flowing about the sleeve and then the light just went. I cannot go and put on the gel now. It's a bit late, so I'll continue tomorrow morning. But what I was saying is, if you notice, the first end of this sleeve here, I have hemmed it with I have turned lining. Okay, I've turned lining, and then on both of them. So what that means is that for each of this fillet I had to add 1 inch extra. So like for instance, this fillet that we have here, okay, the fillet that we have here that is 5 inches thick, is actually, I'm actually going to cut it with 6 inch. Now that's 1/2 inch for the turning at the bottom here and 1/2 inch for the joining at the shoulder. If you cannot see it clearly, you are on your own. Go and talk to the people that are in charge of lights in my country. Anyway, I'll continue tomorrow morning. Okay, so like I was saying yesterday, we need to, because of this here is 5 inches, and we will consume 1/2 inch when we're sewing here and 1/2 inch when we're turning the lining. So when we're cutting, we need to cut this at 6 inches because of the 1/2 inch. The same thing, this one is supposed to be 7 inches long by the end of the day, so that means we need to make the length of this one 8 when we're cutting it before we start sewing. All right, so now how do we cut the fillet? Okay, before you cut the fillet, you need to know the distance around the end of the sleeve, because you know the fillet is being joined to the bottom part of the sleeve right here. Okay, so now to do that, we need to measure this and see how many we have. Okay, so if I simply just measure from here to here, what I have here is 6 inches, meaning that the circumference around here is 12. Because if I'm measuring only the top part, that means there's also a bottom part. So 6 plus 6 at the bottom part, that is 12 for the circumference, which is in line with what we have as her bicep measurements. All right, so now that we know that that's 12, when you're cutting the flare for the sleeve, the circumference of that's the mouth, the side of the sleeve that will be connected to the flare that will be connected to the sleeve has to be the same distance around here. So that's 12. So 12 divided by 4, because remember, when you're making a 360-degree flare, please, if you have not seen my video on how to draft 360 degrees, 720 and 1440 degrees flare, please be sure to go and see it, because that will explain this in detail. Okay, so the flare that is attached to the sleeve is a 360-degree flare. So how we get that is we divide that 12 by 4. Okay, we divide that 12 into 4 places when we're cutting the flare. So 12 divided into 4 places is 3 inches. Okay, so you see this paper I have here, I'm going to use 3 inches to make a curve. Okay, I hope that this is clear. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to use 3 inches to make a curve. Okay, so now you see this, I've used 3 inches to make the curve. Now I'm going to cut this one here at 5 inches. I'm going to add the extra 1 inch when I'm transferring this to my fabric. But what I'm going to do is from that 3 inches, now the distance from here to here is 3 inches. This is a 3-inch curve. I'm going to mark 5 everywhere around this curve. Now notice where I'm placing the tape from. Okay, done that, we'll cut. So now this is the pattern I'm going to use to cut the flare that's meant for the sleeve. So you guys see this piece of fabric that I have here. What you're going to do when you're about to cut for the flare is you're going to first of all fold the fabric. Okay, now this is just a piece that I had after I cut. Don't just go straight to cutting a chunk out of the fabric that you have. Always see how you can minimize with the pieces that fall off when you draft your initial pattern. That's what I'm doing here. So you guys notice how I folded this. I first folded it in half and then collapsed this part here. So notice what I'm doing. I'm going to place this side around areas that are sealed so that we will not have any joining anywhere on the sleeve. Remember I said that we'll cut it with 1 inch excess around the body. So now you see this is the one that is supposed to be this is the flare that'll be 5 inches long. You'll do the same thing when you're cutting for the one that's 7 inches long. Okay, now I'm going to cut the lining that is meant for these two sides exactly the way we cut the fabric. So okay, so at this point you can see this is the part I showed you guys how to cut. This is the lining that is meant for it, and the same thing, I have cut a lining. If you notice, the lining is the exact same pattern with the fabric. I did not reduce anything anywhere around it. Okay, so now the next step will be to iron gum stay. Remember the gum stay that I showed you guys at first, that I said that you can use cloth gum in place of the gum stay. We'll iron that gum stay to this piece now. So here we have the gum stay. I'm going to simply open this one up. You see, because of the way we cut it, it doesn't have any joining anywhere. Now, so the same thing I have done to this part is the same thing I'm going to do to the bigger one as well. So this is the one that is 8 inches long. It's supposed to be 7 inches, but we have 1 inch extra here. And anything I do to the small piece from now on should be done to this other part here as well. Okay, so now this is what you're going to do next. After you've ironed the gum stay onto the fabric, you're going to need to stitch the fabric and the lining together. So you see that, make sure you align the circles of the lining and the fabric properly like I have done here. And then we're going to stitch around the edges. When you're done with that, I need you to make notches around the circle. Now when you're done with that, I need you to turn the whole circle inside out to the front side, okay? So Now I'm going to press everything and make it lay flat. You know, trying to turn it inside out has made it all rumple. Okay, so now when you're done with that, I need you to stitch the lining and the fabric together. Just stitch around to hold everything together, like you can see me doing now. Now, when you're done with that, I need you to join these two circles together. So you see this, this is the other side of the flail, the big side. You can tell it's obviously bigger than the one that's on top of it. Now you can see the excess at this point. Now I need you to align the circles. Alright, now next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join this sleeve to the circle. So you see this is how it's supposed to look at the end of the day. Here it's supposed to be joined to here. So what you're going to do is this: you're going to come to the bottom part of the sleeve. That's where you start from. Okay, you pick up everything like this and you will join here together. So now you see the circle of the sleeve. You can see this is the sleeve and this is the circle that we have around here. So simply just join the three levels together. Okay, so now you see this. With that, we have attached the circle, that's the flare on the sleeve, to the sleeve. Now next thing is to attach this sleeve to the body. Alright, so now the next thing is to attach this sleeve to the body. So this is what you're going to do. First thing you're going to do is you're going to pick up the fabric parts of the sleeve, okay, and then you're going to bring it to the fabric parts of the body. You can see that. So you see this is the joining on the body, this is the joining we have on the sleeve. Now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch the both of them around together, similar to how we added the flare to the sleeve. That's me just stitching from here, just stitch from here around. You see this, we're joining the fabric, body and the fabric together, the body and the sleeve together, sorry. So with that, I have attached the sleeve. Next thing is to attach the lining in the same way. Okay, so now what I want you to do is I want you to do this. You're going to take the sleeve, okay, first of all turn the whole thing inside out. Now after you've turned the whole thing inside out, you would bring the sleeve, okay, you will bring the sleeve and you would align it with the armhole. So you see this part here, this is the armhole of the sleeve. After turning everything inside out, you would align this part of the armhole with the sleeve, and then you simply stitch both of them around. After doing this, you would have sealed every single part and you'll be stuck inside, but I'll show you guys how you find a way out. So now after doing that, you would have locked everything inside out like I said before. So now what you do is this: you come to anywhere on the side. So you see this joining here that I have here, this is the joining on the side of the jacket. Okay, so I want you to open, use your steamer pan, open it up a bit. When you do that, turn everything inside out from this hole. And after you have done that, you're going to need to seal. Look, I've turned everything inside out and I'm back to the outside of the hole that I just loosened. You're going to need to seal this hole back. So what you just do is simply pick two of them up like this and join it neatly. Make the rough work to face, make the rough edges to face the inside as you just run the stitch. So you see the rough edges that I have, I'm going to push them inside as they were before, and I'm simply going to run on top, sew over them. And with that, you are done with the jackets. Okay, so I'm going to just take this to the table, iron everything, but you can see we've turned everything to the outside. You can see this is one side of the sleeve, this is the other side of the sleeve that we have here. You just press and iron everything, and that's how you go about it. Now look at it, the armhole here is clean, you cannot see anything rough. The same thing on this other part, the armhole here is clean as well. So I'll take this over to my ironing table, press and iron everything, and if you've gotten to this level, then you are done. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye.